Haha, yeah, the NHL regular season just ended, and already we are seeing articles pop up like this on dailyhive.com. Big shout out over to Trevor Beggs, who went out there and posted this piece for all of us to read. It's going to be linked in the description if you wanted to go out there and check it out yourself, read the scoop that Beggs has, and just kind of dive into which NHL teams would want Elias Pettersson if the Canucks decide to trade him. Now, here's the thing about Elias Pettersson and the Vancouver Canucks. It's been buzzing around all season. We know that the Canucks can still trade him until July 1st. Because by the time the next season's worth of the contract cycle begins, Elias Pettersson will have trade protection. He will not be allowed to get moved unless he okays it. Now, you can debate the legitimacy as to whether or not trade protection and no move clauses and stuff like that, whether or not that actually does matter anymore in today's NHL. But right now, at this moment in time, before July 1st of 2025, right now, Pettersson does not have trade protection. If he gets traded, he has no choice but to go there. July 1st, however, he won't be able to get traded unless he accepts it. We have seen examples in the past where teams, in particular the Vancouver Canucks, force a guy to waive, or they ask a guy to waive and he says yes, because really, it's kind of embarrassing to get asked to waive if you've signed a contract with a team. If you commit your years to a team, the team commits the years to you. And then if you, for some reason, fall off, or you're not all too great anymore, or the team goes a new direction, it's kind of embarrassing to be like, yeah, nah, sorry, I don't want to get traded. You gave me the right to stay here, even though you don't want me here. I am going to exercise my right to not leave. Louis Eriksson did that. And that was kind of embarrassing. Also, I think, did Alex Edler do that too? Nah, but it's kind of different. Edler's a great player. Andrei Kuzmenko a few years ago allowed a trade over to Calgary. He waived because it was like, yeah, this team doesn't want me here. It's kind of embarrassing. If they ask me to get traded, they have this deal planned out with the Flames. Elias Lindholm's going to come over. He's a pretty reasonably good center, and he's a Swede. And if I don't accept this trade, then that trade's not going to go down, and all of a sudden the fans are going to hate me. Yeah, okay, I'll accept it. It happens all the time. At least now in the NHL. It didn't used to. Now it's happening a lot more. But Pettersson will have the opportunity to exercise his no-movement clause once July 1st begins. So, let's dive into Trevor Beggs' piece as to which teams would want Pettersson if Vancouver does decide to trade him between now and the start of July. There are a bunch of teams listed out here, and a few of them are more important than others. The four teams that Beggs lists as prime destinations for Petey are the Carolina Hurricanes, the Buffalo Sabres, the Blue Jackets, and the Islanders. With Carolina, the write-up here talks about how, hey, they failed the Mikko Rantanen experiment, so they might want to go to Elias Pettersson as a rebound. They've been tied to Pettersson multiple times over the past 2 seasons. Vancouver discussed trading him to Carolina before inking him to an 8-year extension last year. It's also been reported that the Hurricanes were in deep talks with the Canucks before they ended up acquiring Rantanen. While Pettersson's game has clearly fallen off, the Hurricanes appear to be a team that still has serious interest in him. Perhaps there's even more appeal from Carolina's perspective since Pettersson is locked up long-term. This isn't another Rantanen or Jake Guentzel situation for them. One interesting trade chip may be Andrei Svechnikov, who is in his 7th season with Carolina. Injuries have slowed him, but Svechnikov has registered just 46 points in 71 games this season. You could make the change of scenery argument for both players. Now, I'm going to say this, Pettersson for Svechnikov, if it's 1-for-1, the Canucks are not doing that deal. They're already depleted at center, with no Hedl, no Miller, no Suter. They're probably going to lose that guy in free agency. What more if Pettersson leaves for a winger? Who's the top-line center in Vancouver? Ratu? Teddy Bluger? Sorry, but not sorry. That's not going to work. There would have to be another center involved there, or at least another asset the Canucks could flip for a center. It wouldn't just be Svechnikov for PD straight up, but if it's like Svechnikov and multiple firsts, and then they trade the multiple firsts for another top-tier guy, then okay, you could twist my arm and say that it's reasonable. But let's move on to some of the other teams here that are talked about in the Pettersson sweepstakes. the Buffalo Sabres, who have been involved in Pettersson-like trades before. In 2018, they traded Ryan O'Reilly to St. Louis. Then they traded Jack Eichel to the Golden Knights. For once, could the Sabres be on the other end of this type of deal? One where they actually acquired the landmark player. Buffalo should be desperate to shake things up, which was evident by them trading Dylan Cousins to the Ottawa Senators at the trade deadline. They have oodles of young assets to get a deal done like this. In fact, a package of Benson, Kulich, a first-round pick, and a second looks similar, albeit lesser, than the return they got back for Eichel in 2021. And I like those players. I like Benson, I like Erie Kulich, I like the draft picks, but again, they don't necessarily address what Vancouver's needs are right now, unless Vancouver flips those assets for other things, other centers and other forwards to help them out. It just doesn't really fit here. I know Zach Benson was really good to start out his NHL career, and Kulich has a lot of potential too, but I just don't really see this particular idea as the biggest fit in the world. Let's move on to the other teams that are written about here. Beggs writes about Columbus, and how Columbus has a lot of young assets as well. He writes here that the 2018 Ryan O'Reilly trade is an interesting blueprint. The Sabres acquired Tage Thompson in that deal, a hulking, young center who was recently a first-round pick. No, the Blue Jackets are not trading Adam Fantilli, but a guy like Cayden Lindstrom does fit the Thompson mold. Of course, Lindstrom is a teenager who was injured for all of this season, but he was a 4th overall pick in last year's draft for good reason. He's big, physical, and can take over games. The Jackets do have a plethora of picks and young players. Vancouver native Kent Johnson could conceivably come back in a trade involving Pettersson as well. Now, I like the idea of Kent Johnson in Vancouver. He's skilled, he's got hands, he can play center, he can play all 4 positions. But Lindstrom and Johnson just doesn't have the same immediate bite that Elias Pettersson does, or at least the bite that Elias Pettersson presents as a valuable trade piece in the now. There's a lot of issues with the way Elias Pettersson plays, but for what's expected out of him, this is a guy who is supposed to be more than what Lindstrom and Johnson are. And I get it, you could say, oh, you're building for the future, but that's clearly not what the Vancouver Canucks are intent on doing. They want to compete, they want to be competitive and be in the playoffs. Any move that they make, or any series of moves that they make, is not going to make the team worse in the now, especially with this gosh darn owner pulling the strings like that lady in the Bye 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 video. So again, unless Vancouver can flip some of these assets for other top-tier talented pieces that they could use in the now, I just don't really see this as a move that makes too much sense for Vancouver with the way that they try to build their team. Now, finally, the last team that's written about here as a prime trade target, it's the New York Islanders. While Miller and Pettersson had their differences, Bo Horvat seems to have no reservations about reuniting with his former teammate. The article then brings up the comments that Bo Horvat made about playing with Elias Pettersson again, how he'd want to do it, he's a special player, good person, we could use him. The Islanders seem to be perpetually stuck in mediocrity. They don't have a ton of picks, although they do hold 2 first-rounders in 2026. Their top prospect is an electric offensive player in Cole Yzerman, who just played with Canucks prospect Tom Willander at BU. Matthew Barzal stands out as the most intriguing player who could come back to the Canucks in return. It looks like the Coquitlam native could use a fresh start elsewhere, although he's not the type of player the Islanders should be trading away. And this, out of all the trade ideas we've discussed so far, this one makes the most sense to me. Get a center back like Barzal, whom we have spoken about in prior videos, asking if he can realistically go back to the center position because he mostly played right wing alongside of Bo Horvat. But Barzal and a top goal-scoring prospect in Cole Yzerman, that's great. I love the sound of that. You don't even need to make another trade. You just trade Petey for Barzal and Yzerman, and that's good. You change things up on center with a guy who is cheaper and who maybe does have still a top-line elite ceiling, and you get a goal-scoring prospect that can rival Jonathan Lekkerimäki long-term if you wanted both of these guys to pan out as goal-scoring sniping guys. I love this trade proposal more than all the other ones we have talked about. And the article will be linked in the description if you want to go out there and read it, because there are a whole bunch of other teams listed as secondary suitors, but these 4 are the main ones. In fact, Beggs goes out there and says at the end here that it's probably not likely worth it to trade Pettersson at all. So the Canucks maybe should just try to keep him and hope that they could get a 100-point center out of him again. But at the end of the day, these are 4 trade proposals for Elias Pettersson, and I want you to let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. What do you think about each of these ideas? Do you think it works? Do you think it doesn't? Let me know in the comment section all your thoughts. I hope you enjoyed this video. And bye.